Hello friends and welcome to the first episode of It's Getting Bizarre in the Bayou, the show where I wade through the terrifying and murky water that is the lore of Hunt the Showdown. Today we're going to be discussing the lore behind the most standard enemy in Hunt, the Grunt, and its relationship to the Hive, Armored, and the Meatheads. Other standard enemies like Water Devils, Hellhounds, and Immolators are not directly related and will get their own videos respectively. So, let's dive in! So for those who aren't familiar with the world of Hunt, it's based in the swamps and farmland of late 1800s Louisiana, where the trauma and death caused by the Civil War has caught the attention of a malevolent entity that goes by many names. The Entity, the Sculptor, or simply It are but a few of the titles given to this being, and its nature is kinda difficult to pin down. Some believe that it's the devil come down to the bayou to sow evil and misery in the wake of the war. Others think that it's a being simply performing experiments and perfecting its craft before unleashing its true evil on the world. Whatever it is, though, it's cruel, vicious, and careful in its constructions. Everything serves a purpose, and anything without purpose is discarded, or repurposed into some new horror. Now, for the most part, there are very few people who can actually stand up to the monstrosities and nightmares that are stalking the swamps and ghost towns along the bayou. But the few that can are called hunters. Hunters belong to multiple factions and groups, such as the American Hunters Association, who are dedicated to killing the monsters that walk the earth. This isn't the first recorded incidents like this, it's just the largest and most widespread and well-documented incident. As a result, many of these groups, including international hunters from a multitude of countries, have rushed to Louisiana for either gold, money, or personal reasons. Now, hunters come from various backgrounds. We're going to go into them a little bit more detailed on another video, but for now I will say some choose this life, others are forced into it through circumstance, like having survived a monster attack, or are forced into it as a form of indentured labor almost, or, in some cases, prisoners are given the option to either live out their sentence or join the hunters and risk dying anyways. A lot of them accept that, and a lot of them die in the process of becoming a hunter to begin with, so it's not an easy job to get into. But again, we'll go into that on another video. The most common creature that the hunters encountered on every hunt are the grunts. These shambling corpses resembled zombies in appearance, but are much more complex and horrifying the further you observe them. When the Louisiana incident began, grunts were the first and only thing people encountered, so many thought that it was some kind of disgusting and horrifying disease spreading throughout the southern United States. However, as time went on, the grunts began to change. Many of them retained a semblance of their former humanity and carried around tools or weapons that they used to attack any hunters or survivors they encountered. And as the supposed outbreak spread, they began to change in appearance as well. Metal cages and supports were bolted to their heads and bodies, wires and gauges to their limbs, possibly to help reinforce them as a means of slowing the deterioration brought on by the natural decay happening to their bodies. Or perhaps it was a defensive measure against attacks from hunters who can easily slaughter dozens of grunts with nothing but a knife and a well-placed jab to their skulls. Whatever the reason, these beasts no longer looked like shambling corpses created by a disease, but now looked as if they were macabre puppets being led around by some unseen master, twisting them to its will. Grunt behavior follows a very basic pattern. Find survivors, attack them, and kill them. If the grunt survives the attack, it simply repeats this process over and over until some unknown stimulus changes it. Unarmed grunts will claw, scratch, bite, beat, and generally assault the crap out of any living thing they come into contact with. But other grunts are known to carry torches, knives, and axes, as well as a few would-be hunters turned monsters carrying around their former broken guns. These armed zombies are more dangerous than their unarmed brethren and can cause various blights to an unfortunate or slow hunter. A bladed weapon can cause bleeding, a lantern lights its target on fire, an old bone saw gives a nasty infection, and a gun goes off and alerts other grunts in the area to prey. In addition to humans, it's been reported that when there were more animals around, grunts would also go after any of them that they could find, and attempt to kill them as well. Many grunts can actually even be seen eating the corpses of cows, pigs, and sheep, although they don't actually seem to need to feed. It's just a very basic instinct their brains are clinging onto, which can be supported by the fact that when grunts encounter dead or dying horses, they won't actually interact with them or attack them. And since horses in American society are not seen as food, that could just be an indication of their dying humanity clinging to their skulls. However, due to their low intelligence, if a living creature is behind some kind of closed barrier, grunts are not actually able to make the connection that they can just simply break their way in like every other zombie would. Even if it's a fairly weak structure like chicken wire in a coop, grunts will literally be standing right next to a chicken coop full of perfectly living chickens making noises, or dogs in a kennel howling and barking and growling, and they'll just ignore them because in their mind, those creatures are just out of their reach. They can't get in there. They literally can't see that they can just break down the wire and kill the animals. So, in short, grunts will never be problem solvers. They have to rely on the support of other monsters to draw out any potential prey from a hiding place. But what they lack in intelligence, they make up for in numbers and determination. Once prey has come into their reach, they will relentlessly pursue it until either A, it dies, B, it kills them, or C, it goes beyond their ability to perceive it. Now, fortunately, because their eyesight is poor, which is due to the fact that their eyes are literally rotting, avoiding detection or getting out of their range of sight is actually not that difficult. In fact, hunters have been known to simply crouch and walk right up to a grunt, and the grunt won't see them until they are right in its face or they stand up. That's how poor their eyesight is. Despite having the appearance of being a rotting corpse brought to life, they may actually be a lot more complicated than many people believe. In the journal entries of Dr. Reinhard Winkler, he discusses his observations of a single specimen that he and a group of survivors managed to capture and put down. He is accompanied by a priest, Father Nico, who performs a ritual that is supposed to cut the grunt off from the darkness that controls it. Although the doctor seems to believe that may have been more for the father's benefit, as the wards may be doing little more than securing Father Nico's peace of mind, truth be told. I have more faith in bullets having rendered this thing inert than this ritual. He then refers to another researcher known as Harold Black, saying that Black refers to the grunts as an empty vessel for a spirit to invade. But he's hesitant to accept that description. As his research continues, a swarm of grunts begins to amass outside of their hiding place, seemingly drawn to them by some unknown means. The doctor begins to dissect the corpse over a few days' time, writing down his observations, although it's slow work due to the state of decay that the grunt was already in. He begins to hypothesize, however, that until a grunt is put down, the actual person that they used to be might still be trapped inside the body. forcing them through their own personal hell of having to see everything through the eyes of their former body, no longer under their control, and watch as it attacks and kills other people, possibly even former loved ones. He continues his work, finding that most of the internal organs, largely unchanged, all appear human. Other than the rot, they seem normal. Once he gets to the circulatory system, however, is where things begin to change. He notes something wrong with the heart, seems deformed. Deformed is scribbled through multiple times. Spherical in form. Pulsing, but not pumping for lack of a better term. Even in death, it keeps on pulsing in a dark, sticky fluid. I had to check the wards to see if they are intact, fearing that dark presence is making it move again. But no, this is some kind of primal reflex. Leads me to think it's still alive, or dead. As their research continues, Reinhard begins to actually embrace more of Nico's beliefs, the spirituality of this creature, causing him to actually fear the unknown even more than he already was. He begins to actually carefully check the wards every time he goes to perform any action, more and more terrified that the Grunt is actually still under control of whatever is holding it. As the days go by, Reinhard's mental state clearly begins to deteriorate due to lack of sleep and an abundance of fear of the unknown and of the swarms of undead waiting right outside their doors. However, he also makes his greatest discovery and breakthrough. The heart is now actually a nest for a swarm of tiny larvae, which pumps some kind of sticky black fluid through the veins to even more larvae throughout the body, theoretically being used as a source of nourishment for them. He does begin to realize, however, that the corpse may not be fully dead and has actually been metamorphosizing into something else. The veins have become similar in appearance to the wings of flies, and the corpse seems to be spasming almost as if it's going to explode. We never find out what this metamorphosis brings on, however, as the last words in his journal entries are, "The grunts are almost in." We never find out what happened to Reinhard or Nico or any of the other survivors who managed to make it to that point. We can only assume that the worst happened, and that the hordes of the undead broke in and tore them all apart, adding their bodies to its ranks. Now, the addition of the insects inside of the Grunt's torso and veins and heart creates a tie-in to so many of the other monsters roaming the bayou. From the swarms of insects living inside the hive in a hive's torso, the wasp-like nest covering a armored's body and protecting it, the leeches that live inside of a meathead's body, which although they are not insects, are still invertebrates and still somewhat related to them. This even goes even further to the insect swarms that the assassin controls, and to the very nature of the spider itself. All of these can be traced back to, in my personal theory, the Grunt's insects that live inside of its body, metamorphosizing it, changing it, and adapting it to become what it needs to become. Now, with the hive, they don't always start out as grunts and become a hive later on. Many times they are just women who turn into hive on their own, as horrifying as that is. But I think that the grunts eventually become a cocoon of sorts for these insects, and those insects become what they are meant to become through some means. Some stimulus causes them to go in one path or another, which then causes the corpse to become more adapted to certain forms of behavior. So if the person was a durable, hardy person, those insects will eventually become wasp-like creatures and form the nest that protects an armored's body and mutates it into becoming a more lethal and durable predator. To, if they were a large person in life, they become the leeches inside of a meathead. Now, we're going to go into each of these creatures more in detail in their own videos, but I wanted to start off with the Grunt because of the fact that I think they tie in so closely to all of these other creatures, because the Grunts are so basic that they're just a blank canvas for the entity to create something even worse from. As we can see with it mutating even after it's dead, it begins to mutate into something else, which hopefully we will eventually find out what they become after they mutate, even further after death. But I'm excited to continue going into these with you all. I hope you're enjoying this so far. Please let me know in the comments what you liked about the video, if you enjoyed the video. And thank you for watching and listening to my ravings of a madman. And I look forward to seeing you next time with more It's Getting Bizarre in the Bayou. Thank you, everybody.